Hi, good morning. This is R.N. Bhaskar from BKBB, which is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. And this channel brings to you policy analysis, conversations, and occasional business stories. But right now at 8:15 in the morning, we come to you with news behind the news. We look at some headlines and we analyze them. And today my co-anchor is Anurag. Welcome, Anurag. And shortly we'll be joined by my other co-anchor, Katya. Oh, Katya's here. Wonderful. Katya, welcome. And the three of us will discuss the following headlines. The headlines are on your screen. The first is the DGCA, India's Aviation Authority, finally decides to look at the possibility of faulty fuel control switches in the Boeing that crashed. The second story is about fertilizers and what should India do. And the third one is demystifying some of the numbers that are there in inflation. Let's begin with the first story. The first story is about DGCA finally announcing a probe into the suspected fuel control switches in the Boeing that crashed. First, look at the charts. The company which has the largest number of Boeings is Air India, thanks to the previous aviation minister, which did a bulk purchase of Boeings, even though many believed they were not required. And that became there was a huge uproar. Boeing has a problem, has a problem of faults and airplane crashes also. And Boeing's usual answer is, no, we don't know about it till a second crash takes place, and then it grudgingly accepts and admits its fault. Now let's take the present Air India case. The present Air India case was one which took place actually on June 12th. The government said it would submit a report in 3 months' time. In this period, between June 12 and today, there were lots of rumors about fuel contamination, about pilot error, and sadly, there were some reports that the pilots wanted to commit suicide, or at least one of them. The Indian Commercial Pilots Association took umbrage and immediately slammed the report and said it was not they were not suicidal. And they submitted what the FAA of USA had submitted to its authorities as a recommendation. Now, look at what the recommendation was. The recommendation was sent on December 17, 2018. The FAA Aviation Safety said that the subject line said engine, fuel and control. And below that, in bold, was a sentence saying, this is information only. Recommendations aren't mandatory. And in it said that we would like you to look at people who have purchased the following Boeing planes, and there's a whole list of planes that may have been purchased, and the potential for disengagement of the fuel control switch locking feature. This is also borne out by the conversation between the two pilots as gleaned from the black box. When the plane started losing altitude and wouldn't take the thrust up, one of the pilots notices the fuel control switch in the locked position and said, why did you do that? And the second pilot says, I did not. It was put in the on position. One engine started, which was enough for the plane to take off, had it been done just about 2-3 seconds earlier. By that time, it had lost altitude, and even though one engine was working, it could not pick up as quickly, and the plane crashed. When the plane crashed, they found that the fuel control switch was in the on position, which is borne out by the discussion among the pilots. And one wonders why the DGCA took such a long time. Was it to protect Boeing? Please remember when the fault was noticed, Boeing has enough clout in America to persuade the FAA to send out an advisory, a recommendation, and not mandatory, especially when it could destroy people's lives. At least mercifully, the government, through the DGCA, has started looking into the possibility of the faulty fuel switch. One hopes the truth will come out and not buried under as usual. And this is where we need to understand that the government is responsible for unearthing the truth and not allowing rumors to spread. Too many rumors have been spread. And I think they're doing the right thing by starting a probe on this switch. Anyway, that is the end of my story. Let's go to the second very important story, and that is on fertilizers. Anurag, could we have you?
Good morning. India has sharply reduced its dependency on China for fertilizer imports. But what does this shift really means for India's agricultural landscape and food security? On paper, India produces about 84% of the fertilizer it consumes. Yet, the figure masks a more complicated reality. For urea and NPK fertilizers, domestic production is strong, but when it comes to DAP, a crucial nutrition for many crops, India's self-sufficiency drops to just 40%. Potash tells an even starker story, with every grain is imported. Recent export restrictions from China, once India's largest fertilizer supplier, sent ripples through the global market. The government responded by diversifying its import sources. Russia now leads as India's top fertilizer supplier, followed by Saudi Arabia, Oman, China, and Morocco. Just last week, Indian firms signed a 5-year deal with Saudi Arabia's Ma'aden to secure over 3 million tons of DAP annually from 2025. This move not only cushions India from supply shock, but also reduces its reliance on any single country. At home, the government is working to boost domestic production. Policies encourage technology upgrades and revival of idle plants, and the use of innovative solutions like nano urea and biofertilizers. Subsidies and digital soil health cards help farmers use a fertilizer more efficiently, cutting waste and environmental impact. But the story doesn't end with fertilizers. Alternatives like hydroponics, growing crops without soil, or traditional fertilizers are gaining ground. Though the initial costs are high, targeted subsidies and training programs are making this technology more accessible, especially in urban and peri-urban areas. India's fertilizer strategy is evolving, balancing the need for self-reliance with a push for innovation and sustainability. Each step taken, whether diversifying imports or embracing new farming methods, brings Indian agriculture closer to a more secure and resilient future. What's your take on this, sir?
Anurag, you're bang on. India needs fertilizers, but India may need hydroponics more urgently. This is the only technology that does not use soil in a country where soil quality is depleting rapidly and groundwater is being exploited to a point where salinity comes in. And in the age of climate change, hydroponics appears to be the only solution because you can control climate at 1/10 the use of water, and yet multiplying production by 6 or 7 times. And that is why India needs to look at hydroponics instead of subsidizing fertilizers. Subsidize hydroponics instead. You are right. Thank you. And now we go to Katya with her story on inflation.
So the inflation numbers have come in for the eighth straight month. The inflation, CPI retail inflation has been below the RBI targets, with the targets, and more importantly, it's the lowest that we've seen in 6.5 years. So that's a very interesting number. But let's just take a closer look at the numbers. So as you can see, June CPI's inflation has fallen. F&B inflation, the most important for food and beverages, deflated to 0.2%, and this is a very, very, very big change. But once we should actually look at a closer numbers, hair oils, creams, and and other vanity project products, inflation has been high because manufacturers have passed on the input cost. And more importantly, core inflation is ticked a little higher, and core inflation is always going to be a sore point because between wars we can never know when crude will flare up again or come down again. So that is going to be something we have to watch out. And very interestingly, miscellaneous category has registered a high, very high inflation of 5.5%. 5.5% is very high. And but what are the constituents of miscellaneous category? It's education and health inflation, both of them 4.4 each, both of them above 4%. So which is because of a passover of high costs. We've been talking about how education is becoming expensive day by day regularly on this show. And then one more thing, but the experts do not see any more rate cuts from RBI after the jumbo rate cut that it's given 50 bips rate cut recently. And that's also because front loading more interest rates would also affect rupee is not doing greatly, especially with in comparison with our Asian peers, because for because of our FDI and foreign inflows have been on a bad plane, and balance of payments is also a huge question due to the trade war. So lots of issues. So what do you think, sir? Do you think inflation is something we have to keep still worrying about, even though FNB has come down a little and it's become benign? And all these things, like hair oils, creams, and education health, are going to impact consumption. So, which means a lot of transmission of earlier rate cuts has not happened. So, what is your opinion?
You're right, Katya. The inflation numbers look very attractive,
Mm.
but street level realities are quite different from statistical numbers that suggest a lowering inflation. We are in a difficult situation, especially the middle class, because the middle class is one which can get squeezed badly. The poor get freebies, the rich don't care. It's a middle class that gets hurt. Even at the slightest inflation, especially at things like personal care products and miscellaneous, education, healthcare, where the government has failed miserably.
Right.
Thank you. You are right. And let me take the questions first. But before I take the questions, just a small reminder. Please click on the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. Please click the like button. It helps us. And most important, please tell all your friends about us. It also helps us grow faster. And that takes me to the questions. Can the DGCA, India's authority for aviation, the Director General of Civil Aviation, implement a thorough SOP and security investigation of an emergency part by experts? In fact, that should be done. There are two parts to it. Even when the advisory was sent, at that time, Air India was owned by the government. Who was responsible for making sure that all advisories were looked into? It's quite clear that someone gave the advisory a miss. The finger points back to the government. And who did not look at this crucial part of evidence, even after recordings of the black box suggested that it was a switch that was responsible? Why does it have to come out at the last minute? 1 month is a long time. And that is why these questions need to be asked. There's a second question, and that's again for Katya. The question is, inflation is painful. What are the ways to control inflation meaningfully?
So if it's food inflation, it can even a little bit of push on the vegetable side, and improving plantation could help. But core inflation, we can't do anything about it. It's depending on the vagaries of wars and nature. We can't do anything about it. And if manufacturers are passing on high input costs, again, nothing can be done about it. So tightening monetary policy sometimes helps inflation, but surprisingly it doesn't seem to have an effect, because a lot of rate cuts have been taken, but doesn't look like it's been passed through. It's not impacting demand, so the market is behaving in a different way. What do you think, sir?
I just wonder whether anything could be done to reduce inflation in education and healthcare. Two crucial inputs for the middle class.
Right. uh, it's the will of the people, so we do not know, sir.
I know it's something that the government can't do anything about. It's a policy makers who have to realize how the pain that common people undergo.
Right.
There's a third question that comes up on fertilizers. Uh, is there any way of India boosting its fertilizer production? Yes, there are ways. But a better suggestion is the one that Anurag made of looking at new technologies, especially hydroponics. As weather changes, your crops are going to be hurt. Don't wake up at the last minute. Reduce fertilizer subsidy by encouraging more and more hydroponics and what do they call it? Tent farming, which can actually help reduce the use of fertilizers and, more importantly, reduce water consumption and yet increase production with better margins, with better incomes, making the farmer stronger. Anyway, that brings me to the end of today's discussions. Thank you for being with us, and I'm glad that you're here. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. And between now and tomorrow morning, have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves.